Thank you for holding this hearing today on this important topic. I hear this from people all across Alabama. The lack of drone mitigation authority for state and local law enforcement has become a critical issue. We see it specifically when we're looking at large public gatherings, which includes large sporting events, which my state takes great pride in. And we want to make sure that public safety comes first. Even when it comes to federal installations in Alabama, it's often state and local law enforcement and personnel who are the closest and most capable of actually responding. We see this too. Our Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, who is headed by Secretary Hal Taylor, who does a tremendous job. They assist federal partners and are likely the first ones to be able to respond and to do it in a meaningfully and efficient way. But without proper authority, they can't act with the speed and coordination that they need that matters most in a time of a crisis. So I'm going to address this question to Captain Wilson and Sergeant Dooley to start with. Is there a legislative solution that is as simple as just extending existing mitigation authorities to state and local law enforcement that would actually help in these situations? Or is there other gaps in the law that need to be considered? And what should our top priorities be when considering a legislative solution to actually address this issue?
We looked in it extensively, especially when we started working with our federal partners. Those permissions were granted by Congress, right? So they can't be delegated. Like, for example, some TFO programs, temporary federal officer programs, where the U.S. Marshals will deputize local law enforcement with certain abilities to do U.S. Marshals things. We looked into that, and again, we feel that the authority couldn't be delegated. Like, that would have been the simplest approach. Deputize me as whatever,
right.
And under your supervision or guidance, we would move forward and do this, but we don't think that's correct. So I don't know what we would do as a simple solution, other than we're in this room here trying to figure it out. But we've tried to look down some of those legal avenues of doing it correctly, but that was what we came up with, and they can't delegate those authorities if they were to bless us as a TFO.
Again, like Sergeant Dooley said earlier, that there has to be training, there has to be some accountability, there has to be transparency for all the agencies that start, and you're going to have to start somewhere with some credentialing of some law enforcement agencies at the appropriate level.
So are those things that we could be doing right now? What are things that we could be doing right now to make sure that we're preparing for that we're taking proactive steps to be able to allow state and local law enforcement to have this capacity or this ability in the future?
So I think that right now you should probably establish like who would run this from a federal level. That would, once we get started with that, then we start figuring out how we should roll this out, who should be a part of the initial rollout, and what type of equipment we should be using, and more importantly, some type of process in place of standardizing how this is used, a reporting process in place, et cetera, to where if I do deploy something and we do detect and we do mitigate or whatever it is, that there is proper, like we talked about multiple times, of accountability. So if I'm right, everything's fine, I submit a report. If I did something wrong, we can identify it and either correct it or discipline or whatever the case is. There has to be right or wrong. We have to have transparency to do that. But I think we should identify a federal entity of some sort that should control this, moving out towards public safety.
And is the training in place now to be able to make these moves?
No, ma'am.
No.
So we would need to be able to invest in that as well?
Yes.
Okay. I want to turn to you, Secretary Dixon, in my last few minutes. In Alabama, like most other states, we have seen an increase in drones using to fly contraband into correctional facilities. As you have testified today and spoken with my colleagues about, that presents a real risk, not only to inmates, but obviously the officers as well. Based on your experience, can you kind of explain to us some of the unique challenges related to drone mitigation when it comes to the to a correctional setting, and how those should inform us as we're looking at potential legislation?
Hey, Senator, one of the most significant challenges is they come in and we don't know they're there. Often they fly, sometimes they fly high, they're fast, they're swift. So often the contraband is delivered and we never saw it coming, so we're defenseless. We have limited systems that help detect when they're coming in, but not nearly as advanced as they should be and as the technology is capable to deliver right now if we had the federal authorities we need. And I would just like to add, not to be melodramatic, but I would encourage us to act with the same sense of urgency that we would if we were watching on the news right now that multiple automatic weapons were just delivered into one of our compounds by drone and to gang members, and they escaped or harmed or killed other inmates or staff, because that is a very likely scenario. That's not being an alarmist, that's very likely. And I'm not implying we're not, it's why we're here today, and we're so thankful that we're having this discussion.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Moody.